Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to have Erin here. She is a new friend of mine that we connected online through actually podcasting, and I became absolutely obsessed. Erin Treloar is her name, and her community is Raw Beauty. Yes?
Co.
Raw Beauty
Yes, you
Co.
nailed it.
Yeah, I like Co.
You nailed it. I mean, Raw Beauty Co. Yeah, whatever Raw Beauty, whatever iteration. It's a group of women who are all working to feel their most confident, healthy, well selves, leaving diet culture and negative body image and all that behind so we can really thrive in life. That's what we're all about over here.
Gosh. Well, I'm just so aligned in your mission because something that I didn't unlock until like literally the last 2 years was that my body is an integral part of my business. I kind of always worked in like, oh, my brain is like the most important part. My brain is doing all the things. But when things really started to like click into alignment and explode for me, when I was like, wait, my body is an actual tool. And it also tells me answers. And it also like I have to take care of it or I drain out and track my energy. And do you agree?
Oh my gosh, so I have 8 paradigms of wellness. And the very first one is your body is on your team. So many women have become disconnected with their body at some point, whether it was puberty or in high school being bullied about the way that they looked or their weight or comparing themselves to media. And so many people are disconnected from their body or feel like their body's working against them or it's not enough. And when you can get back on the same team as your body and work with your body so that you are able to max out on energy, well-being, focus, clarity, intuition, and those like downloads and hits, this is when you become your most powerful self. And so, I mean, couldn't be a better place to launch this conversation from, because I really believe Suzy, I even have like a few notes for this. The very first note is your body is on your team. If we can create that one paradigm shift for everyone who's here right now, that would be, take that and run with it. Your body is on your team. It wants to thrive, not just survive. It wants to thrive. It wants to grow. It wants to expand. It is constantly communicating with you, telling you what it needs. And when we can get quiet and start to tune into those signals, it's just like that we're playing a whole nother game.
Oh my gosh. Well, I so agree with you. I didn't realize that I was actually so disconnected from my body. And I actually doing all the work that I've done over the past few years, didn't realize that like I didn't actually see my body as my own, which was super
interesting.
bizarre.
Yeah.
I feel like religious culture that I grew up in, modesty culture, which isn't a bad thing, but the way that I perceived it and took it was like to very extreme. And it was like my body was not actually mine. It was like my churches, they dictated what I wore, what I couldn't wear, and then got married. And it was like, this is your husband's tool. And you just have it. And so I had to do a ton of work to even like reclaim that my body is mine. And then the next layer of that was like, okay, it is mine. And now what do I do with that? And how do I actually connect with this beautiful vessel?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad that you shared that, because I haven't actually heard that perspective of, for a reason why people would disconnect from their body. The majority of women that I'm working with have felt like their body didn't look right, have felt like their body wasn't fitting within the beauty stereotype that's laid out for us as women. And that is the primary fracture or cause for disconnection in the body. But what you just explained makes so much sense as well. I've also heard of women who feel disconnected from their body because of trauma they've experienced, sexual assault or sexual abuse, or illness is another common one. So when your body isn't quote unquote working the way that you would hope to, or you're experiencing infertility, these are all really common fractures that can have us disconnecting from the body, which is our primary tool. And it's our vessel for this beautiful life experience that we have.
It is. So I think there's a billion reasons why we disconnect. And I would probably, wouldn't you say like literally most women are probably living life disconnected from their bodies?
Absolutely. I mean, we know 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies.
Oh
now we're just talking 91%? About 91% of women are unhappy with some element of their body.
Wow.
And don't feel even like a neutral, they don't even have a neutral relationship with their body. There's a negative relationship with the body. And of course, when we're struggling with body image, this is really linked to our self-esteem and our self-worth and how we show up in the world, from parenting to the work that we do to pursuing our passions. And so the reason that I'm so passionate about helping women to not only repair their relationship with their body, but to really get back on the same team and to work with it, is because I truly believe that it unlocks every other category of a woman's life. Like, your relationships will be deeper. You'll feel more job satisfaction. You'll feel more confident in creating a life that you've been dreaming of. So it's not just about the food. It's about really helping women tap into the life that they want.
Oh, that's so good. Literally something I heard explained is like the Trinity. Like, obviously there's like the religious Trinity, but our personal Trinity of like mind, body, spirit together in alignment. If you think of like literally Trinity, like a cross, there's that center intersection point. And it's like, whoa, so how do we do it? I want to get back on the same team. Go team. What do I do? Walk me through this.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because there's kind of three categories that I walk women through. And the first is supporting the physical body. The second is tending to emotional needs. And the third is expansion, moving forward, growth, development. So speaking of that Trinity, it kind of is so aligned with it. And I know that there's probably a lot of people who are really religious who listen to this podcast episode. I went to church growing up, but then life and all of the things, and we kind of stopped doing the Sunday school thing. So I'm loving having this conversation with you because I feel like I'm learning so much and hearing things that I haven't heard for a really long time. And it's all coming full circle. So first of all, when we talk about getting back on the same team as our body, we have to understand that this isn't something that we need to relearn. Like, it's not a new language that we're learning, but it is more of a refresher or coming back to something that's innately within. When we were little and when we were born, we were highly attuned to our body's needs. We cried when we were hungry. We just went to the bathroom when we needed to go to the bathroom. We expressed our emotions fully and with abandon. And as we grew up and became socialized and sort of learned things from our parents or teachers or our peers or media, we began to disconnect from those cues. So I'll give you an example. Let's just start with an easy one, going to the bathroom, right? You know when your body starts to give you a little whisper of a signal that says, Erin, you need to go pee. Like, it's time to go to the bathroom, right? And we don't really question that. We're like, okay, is there a bathroom? Or like, when's this podcast interview going to wrap up? Because I got to go, right?
Yeah.
And if we ignore that communication from our body, it gets louder and louder, doesn't it? And you're not able to focus on whatever it is that you're doing because your body's telling you, like, Erin, you have to go to the bathroom. Now, our body also does that when it comes to hunger and fullness cues. So when you were little, you might notice, like, I'm a bit hungry. I have 2 kids and they come to me and they're like, you can tell they're lurking around the kitchen, they're opening cupboards, right? They've got that little whisper of, I'm hungry. And then if we don't eat, the body gets louder and louder and we start to find it difficult to focus and we're thinking about food. And then the temperature of the body actually drops. So the body is giving us all of these cues that it needs food. Now, what often happens when we are struggling with body image or we don't like the way that we look is we get hooked into diet culture. And we start following these rules. Like, I'm only going to eat between 11 and 6. And I'm only going to, like, I'm not going to have any of that type of food. And I'm not going to address that craving that I'm going to have because that's wrong and it's bad. And the most important thing is for me to be thin. So we stop listening to the cues of the body. It's almost like, imagine if you had to go to the bathroom and you were like, no, body, we only pee between 11 and 6 p.m. No peeing outside of that, right?
Oh, that's sad. That makes me sad.
We do it all the time. And we hear our mothers doing it and teachers doing it. And for me, I read about it in, like, my mom wasn't hooked into diet culture. This wasn't present in my home, which is rare. But I was so attuned to what models were eating and, you know, what size their waist was and weighing myself all the time. And so we disconnect from these signals. And over time, the body is just like, she's not listening. Like, I kind of give up. And we lose touch with the whisper And really, we can generally only, like what I find working with women is that they can hear when the body's really screaming. So you know when
Yeah.
you're
Like,
really hungry and you know when you're really full. And as a result, we become disconnected from those signals. We start to trust external sources,
mhm.
our personal trainer, the blogger, to tell us what our body needs. And we are no longer connected to the intuition. And with time, we start to see things break down. We see disordered eating. We see constant thoughts about food and the body. We see cravings, blood sugar levels like up and down. I mean, all sorts of dysfunction, anxiety, depression, weight fluctuating, people gaining weight because we're just not in tune with the body.
Mm.
And so, if we can get back to listening to those signals, balancing our blood sugar levels, and really tending to the physical body, then we can start to focus on our emotional hunger, which is a whole
Mm.
nother topic that we can dive into as well. But the
Wow.
first step is to support you in reconnecting with those signals so that you're working on the same team as your body.
Is it hard? Is it hard? Like if you're
It's
like,
not
I've
hard.
been shut out, I'm sick, I'm having all these random illnesses coming up. Like it sounds to me like people be like, that feels like a pipe dream for me because I'm so disconnected. My body's breaking down. I don't think like all of a sudden listening to the whisper is going to work. Is it hard?
Yes. It's not hard, but it does require really digging into your beliefs. So
Okay.
here's the thing, from a food perspective, it's actually quite like the steps are quite simple that you would take to start to rebuild back those signals. First of all, if you haven't been tuned into your body and working with it consistently, the communication is broken, right? It's the
Mm.
same idea as if you and Todd, if you just ignored him constantly and he was like, this chick, like she's, I don't know, he shuts down, there's a lack of trust, the communication is broken, right? If you just turn around all of a sudden, you're like, Todd, I'm ready to listen. He's going to be like, F you, like, honestly. I've just had 10,
Totally.
15 years of you completely ignoring
Totally.
me and
Yeah.
starving me and then binging and then like
Yeah.
all this behavior. It's just not as easy as that. So we've got to build back the trust between you
Mm.
and your body. And we use something called the golden guidelines to support with this. So I'll share those guidelines right now. The first is to have something to eat within an hour of waking up. The second is to eat something every 2 to 3 hours. So we have to build back trust with the body so that it knows we are going to feed it
Feed it. Mm.
and it's going to receive nourishment consistently. We want to aim for 2 or more food groups in our snacks, 3 or more food groups in our meals. And this is so that we're giving the body a really beautiful assortment of micro and macronutrients. And then the fifth one, which is probably the most difficult for people, is to give yourself permission to eat. This is the one that trips people up the most
Mm.
because they have spent so much time feeling like they cannot eat, they shouldn't eat that they're eating, that their cravings and that their hunger is wrong. And we have an incredible fear as a society of gaining weight.
Mm.
And so this idea of giving yourself permission to eat, people think like, well, I couldn't. I know what happens when I give myself permission to eat. I binge or I eat all of the things or I'll only eat ice cream. I promise you, if you give yourself permission to eat and you eat ice cream for 3 days straight, you are not going to want another bite of ice cream for months and months and months after it. The reason that you crave the things that you crave is because for so long you've told yourself you can't
You
have
can't
them.
have them.
The
Wow.
most addictive type of food is not sugar, it's not carbs, it's none of those things. It's the food you have told yourself you
You
cannot
can't have.
have.
Oh my gosh. I just like my heart breaks a little because I think like running a business, as you know, is so freaking hard. And
Yes.
it is like your mind calorie spend. It's just
Yes.
like you are always like going, going, going. And I've noticed this like pattern that I get into of like I will go, I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's 2 p.m. and I haven't
Mhm.
eaten anything all
Mhm.
day. And then I'm like, that's not productive work. That's not, but I like prioritize everything else my brain is doing over what my body is doing.
Right. Right. And I completely relate to that too. I think when you're passionate about the work that you're doing, also for some of us who have more neurodivergent brains that hyper focus and fixate on things, like
Yes.
food can become a bit of an afterthought. I know that there are some people who live to eat, and then there are people who eat to live, right?
Yes.
And so regardless, there's no right or wrong here, but regardless, your body needs nutrients. It needs fuel. You've got to keep the gas tank steady, and you want to put
Gas tank
food in
steady.
there. Yeah, that is going to fuel it. So food is, when we're looking at intuitive eating, food is primarily fuel. We're looking at it as primarily fuel, but we cannot deny the fact that it can also be and
Be
should be pleasure,
so pleasure. So much pleasure.
connection with, like, we're having dinner with our families, or we're meeting a girlfriend and having a beautiful dinner and talking. Like, it is connection, it is pleasure, it is these other things too. For some people, food has become an emotional crutch. It's become a tool to support you in navigating difficult emotions, or even sometimes good emotions, right? Like, put up your hand if you get really happy and you're like, we got to celebrate with food, right?
Totally.
And so there's nothing wrong with this. Like, we're all going to be emotional eaters at some level. But here's the thing. If we are only eating based on emotion, or we are only eating when we finally think about it at 2 p.m. because our hunger levels are screaming at us,
Yes.
right? Then we're making completely different choices than if we were eating
Totally.
intuitively and as if our body was on the same team. So we want to have this idea that food is fuel. Sometimes I'm going to eat for pleasure or connection, that type of thing. And to be honest, we always want to look at what we're eating. We want it to be pleasurable, and we want it to be satisfying, which I can talk about in a moment as to why that's so important. But we want to look at it as this incredible force and fuel that helps us and propels us towards our dreams and allows us to show up as our best self.
I'm obsessed with the word that you just said, pleasure, because actually one of the biggest disconnects I had from my body, I think so much religious stuff in there, was like complete disconnection from not only like sexuality, sensuality, but in disconnection from that pleasure. Like not only sexual pleasure, the pleasure of sitting down to eat an apple slowly, like realizing that like I have not prioritized pleasure on any single level that the word pleasure means, like literally walking outside and letting the sun hit your face. Like, but when I unlocked that back into my life, like there's pleasure every freaking where I look. In every moment I can choose like this beautiful pleasure, which I have found in my business is like when I'm actually leaning into these moments, leaning into the sun on my face, leaning into like, oh my gosh, the fabric of the sweater feels so good on my wrist. Those moments, those are like fuel to me as well as food. And like these types of body like connections have been mind blowing to me because they're simple, they're right there. But I feel like I like found this out on my own. Like, where is all this information?
Well, it's in the Raw Beauty Food and Body Reset. But yeah, you know what? We have an exercise in there called high and low energy activities. And it really is touching on what you are talking about right now. So food is fuel, but there are so many things in life that can fuel us and fill us up. If you imagine for a moment that you have an energy tank, if anyone's read the 5 Love Languages, he talks about this love tank in there. So same idea, but now we're talking about energy or alignment or the way that you're vibrating, you know, whatever language feels right to you. And so there are certain things that are going to fill that tank up. And then there are other things that are going to bang a hole in that tank and drain your energy out. A lot of people are living a life where they're surrounded by people, places, their job, their things, like even the clutter in their home that are punching holes in that
Banging
bucket.
on the tank.
Draining. And then they're like, why can't I get ahead? Why is my mindset so negative all the time? We have to start looking at how do you fill your tank? So even right now, push pause, grab a piece of paper or your notes on your phone and write down the things that energize you, that fill you up, that fuel you. And you may at first think of big things, like it may be, travel or sex or these things that feel a little bit bigger. But I think what becomes really powerful is when we can find the little things. Like for me, now that my anxiety is under control, I'm back to being able to have a latte in the morning, and it is so good. Like I enjoy it so much. And I always notice as well when I'm walking the kids to school and I have their little hands in my hands, like how good that feels and how lucky I am. And it's these little micro moments that fill up the tank in the most beautiful way. And they're often free. So I'm glad you touched on that. I think as well, knowing who's listening to this podcast, and that you probably have a lot of driven women who are career oriented. I'm on the same page where for a long time for me, pleasure just didn't seem productive. It's like 100%. I enjoyed what I was doing at work.
That is a first world problem to get to like have more pleasure.
But I was like, what? Like more sex isn't going to get me ahead, or eating mindfully and slowly. Like, I've got emails to answer.
Totally.
But here's the hack. Here's the thing. You've heard Suzy talk about aligning your vibration, raising your vibration, moving into a more abundance mindset versus always being in lack. How do you think you do that? Pleasure. Like get your body into places of pleasure and fun and play. And it's magnetic to other people and also just raises your entire vibration as well. So I realize that what I'm saying right now is still tying back to productivity, but some of us have to keep that in mind. Like it's just the way that we're built. We have big dreams that we're working towards.
Oh my gosh.
So
I will say though, literally the thing that like is so productive to me though, like when you walk into a room and you are in your body. You are living like fully embodied. That woman is magnetic. That woman, everyone's like, what's happening? What is that person? Why is she so comfortable here? I'm very uncomfortable. She seems comfortable. What is that? What is happening? And that's like literally not being in your head and like out in all the places that your mind is letting you roam. It's like, I'm right here in my body, in this seat comfortably, in this moment with my hands comfortable. It's like, there's so much to this getting in your body conversation that it makes me just want to like shake people and be like, but feel it right now. Like take a breath. Like you're living in there. Isn't that so cool?
It's so difficult though for people to do that because they haven't been given the tools and they don't feel comfortable in their body. You know, a lot of people, when we start doing, I'll take them through a body scan, which I'll actually share a 7-minute body scan with everyone who's listening right now that you can link to. And a lot of people, when they do this body scan, it is uncomfortable being in the body. There's anxiety, there's tension in the chest. They've got, pain across the shoulders. There's a weight in their stomach. And so they don't want to go in the body. That's hard and uncomfortable. But what I've personally felt and experienced, for me, this work started 15 years ago with my own recovery from an eating disorder and binge eating, anorexia. I was in the hospital for 3 months. When I finally sat in my body with a coach myself, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I cried for probably 2 years. Every time I did it, I would just end up sobbing and sobbing. When I would try and do it on my own, I would last for 30 seconds and then I would be up doing busy work, right? Just couldn't sit in there. What I didn't realize is that when you do sit with the emotions and when you can just be with them, no judgment of them being right or wrong, when you can name what you're experiencing. So this body scan that I'm going to send you will walk you through all of this and guide you through it. That almost like a wave, it might feel stronger at first, but then it always crashes and dissipates. It's like your body is metabolizing and processing past trauma. It learns to regulate itself. And as you release these traumas, as you metabolize that energy, now it's more comfortable to sit in your body and to just be with yourself. So I think it's truly one of the most powerful things that you can do. And what I would recommend for anyone listening is to do the body scan once a day, either in the morning or in the evening. To be honest, whatever time you can do it is the best time to do it. and just listen to me as I walk you through it, see what comes up for you, and trust that with time, that the feelings will become softer. Feelings will become softer.
Oh my gosh. This is just such powerful stuff. And I'm so grateful that people like you exist. That literally, I always think that our purpose is often derived from our pain, and hearing what you've gone through. Like, of course, you're like here doing this amazing, beautiful work.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? Where can they find more of this work?
On the website, rawbeauty.co. And then I hang out on Instagram a lot at Raw Beauty Talks. So those are the two main places. And then from there, there's all the things. The
Oh my,
podcast, Raw Beauty Talks,
your
and
podcast is killer.
handouts and
Her
all that.
podcast
Thank
is killer.
you.
As you can tell, she's incredible at podcasting.
Suzy came on my podcast and was just dynamite. Yeah, I
Well,
love everything that you're doing.
Erin, you have a business, a thriving, beautiful business. And I have to ask everyone the question, like, how did your business heal you?
Mm. Whew. In so many ways. I mean, this is a topic I'm really, I feel really connected to, because my business has been my greatest healing force. As I mentioned briefly, I struggled with an eating disorder when I was 16. I was always a bit of a perfectionist and was doing dance and had this image of what a quote unquote perfect body was. And so I started following these protocols in magazines, like how to have abs before New Year's and all of these hacks. And I would read those articles. I don't know if you remember these, but where it would tell you what celebrities ate each day. It would break it down via hours. And as soon as the internet was the thing, I would Google like how many calories are these girls eating. I remember watching the Victoria's Secret fashion shows, and I would do crunches the whole time. And then I would look up the girls to see what size they were. And I very quickly, which happens often with eating disorders, lost an unhealthy amount of weight and ended up being hospitalized in an inpatient program in BC for 3 months, which was one of the most terrifying times of my life. It was right in between grade 11 and 12. And I went from being a straight A student. I was dancing tons in the company and had, been awarded this most improved dancer. Like, I was thriving, and this eating disorder took everything. It took everything. I had to drop out of school because I couldn't focus anymore. I could only think about food and my body. I became obsessed with my friends and my sister, and my youngest sister in particular, and what they were eating. It destroyed relationships. It took everything. And it happened so quickly, and it began so innocently, just as wanting to lose a little bit of weight off of my hips. The reality is that there are many people listening right now, and you know who you are, who experienced the exact same thing. And maybe they weren't lucky enough to go into the hospital. And I say lucky enough because that was my first taste of self-development, of personal growth. Even though it felt like being thrown into a pit of snakes, that's what it was. I got to push pause on life for 3 months and learn about myself. And many, many, many people who struggled with an eating disorder never had that opportunity. And so maybe the ED isn't as acute now, but it's still very present in their life. I came out of the hospital and was at a healthy weight again. I've always been tall and lean. And so now where I found myself was, okay, I'm no longer restricting to the same extreme, but I'm going to focus on eating clean. I'm still counting calories every once in a while as a form of control. And I found myself in a cycle of binge eating. Binge eating is the most common ED. And it's something that it's very easy for it to fly under the radar. Like, it's very easy to be a binge eater and for no one to really know that you're struggling. Whereas with anorexia or bulimia, oftentimes your weight changes and shifts, or there's other symptoms where it's a lot easier for people to know. With binge eating, your weight's either slowly creeping up or kind of staying the same. And so it's this invisible disorder that people struggle with, where oftentimes you are restricting what you eat during the day. And then at some point in the afternoon or in the evening, it feels like you totally lose control around food and you're eating all the things. I mean, I could go on about that period of time for me. It was probably 5 or 6 years. And over that course of time, I gained maybe 10 pounds. But as I said, I was tall and thin. So like it didn't really, again, nobody really knew. And I couldn't label it as anything. I thought that I just couldn't control myself around food. I thought that I was the problem, that my own self-discipline was the issue, because nobody talked about it. Still, nobody really talks about it. So the main thing here is I want you to know that if you're struggling in that cycle where you are feeling out of control around food sometimes, or you know you're eating emotionally a lot of the time and that you're not cued into these hunger and fullness levels, it doesn't have to be that way. And you absolutely can create a better relationship with food and your body that will improve every single area of your life. So I'm in this place, I'm working at a restaurant, I'm a bit of a mess. Like Erin is on a roller coaster of living the highest highs and crashing the lowest lows, making a lot of interesting life decisions in all the different ways. And it wasn't until I met a life coach myself and I started working with her. I wasn't working with her on the food and body image stuff. I was working with her on what the hell am I doing with my life? But she taught me how to get into my body, and she helped me learn how to regulate my emotions. And she helped me identify areas of my life where they were undernourished, where I was craving attention. The main area that I started working on was expressing creativity. I was like, well, what the hell is that going to do? You know, I've got a business degree. I'm working in, like, creativity doesn't really fit in this area. But by nurturing and nourishing that creative part of my life, I came up with the concept of an online space that featured women without makeup, photo editing, or filters. These really beautiful photos. This was back in 2014. So Dove had just come out with its very first campaign. That was a huge inspiration to me. But other than that, there wasn't anything like it. And I interviewed the women and we talked about their relationship with food and body image and high school and their thoughts on plastic surgery and all of these things. So talk about a healing process in and of itself. And I had 200 plus conversations with women. The site went off because so many women were craving
that
a more real, raw conversation. And that's how the first iteration of the site was called Raw Beauty Talks. And that's how it all started.
Whoa. I always literally, for so many people listening, literally there is something in our business that is medicine for our soul. And we push it away. We say not now. I shouldn't do that. I'm like a busy mom. I don't have time for that. Even just like you said, exploring the little creativity of it. There's medicine in it for you. So thank you for illustrating that so beautifully. Thank you for all the women's lives that you're changing. I hope so many of them from this podcast get in touch with you. I personally will give all of my recommendations to how much this beautiful woman cares.
Thank you.
Thank you. You just care.
Thank you. I do. I really do, because I felt myself, the pain of being in that hellhole of disordered eating, and then what comes out of it on the other side. So I just got to paint a picture here. Okay. I am living in a dark basement suite. I'm single. I'd been dating somebody who was in the public eye, and it was just this toxic relationship where I was so insecure, Suzy. I didn't know if he was into me or not. A mess of a relationship. I've got $2 in my bank account at any one time. I'm working with my parents, which I did love, and I'm so grateful for that moment. But there was, there were implications that came with that as well. And I made a vision board for myself of what I wanted to create. I also, at this point, have been told it's highly unlikely that I'll be able to have children because of the eating disorder and the havoc that it wreaked on my body. So I start working with this coach, and learning all the things and repairing my relationship with food. And I'm sitting here today. I am in the most beautiful marriage with an incredible guy. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old that I, carried and birthed and all of the things. This beautiful body, once I got back on the same team with it, it knew how to heal.
Wow.
And I work one-on-one with women who are in exactly the same place as I once was and who have dreams that they want to fulfill. I shared in stories last week a couple things that I had been messaged just last week. So one of them was a girl that I was working with who had lost her period for 5 years.
Mm.
And she messaged me to tell me that she was pregnant
Oh
and
my
that
gosh.
she was just so grateful
Whoa.
for the work that we
Oh.
had done. And I mean, I teared up, of course.
Oh,
And the only reason I'm sharing this, it's not to brag, but I want people to understand how important and powerful this work is, that it's
totally.
not just about eating more nourishing foods. It's about
Totally.
unlocking these other parts of your life.
Totally.
Another girl signed a lease on a dream space that for her interior design company. So she's been working from home and she's an incredible interior designer, but she was struggling to believe in herself and to find the self-esteem. And as we continue to work together, she called yesterday and she's like, I just wanted you to know I signed that lease and
Oh
we're
my
moving into
gosh.
our very first office. And so there's just all these beautiful stories of what happens when women are given permission to get back on the same team as their body and to let go of the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that are holding you back from really expanding into the fullest version of yourself. And if you are listening to this episode right now, please do not think that you are different than, or that, your situation is X, Y, or Z, so it wouldn't work for you. That's a limiting belief right there. And this is possible for absolutely anyone.
Oh my gosh. I am so happy that we were able to come together, deliver this message. You guys, let's get back on the same team as our bodies. Let's
Yes,
start
please.
the process of listening to the whispers and to not withhold from ourselves and get into pleasure and the beauty that is in our bodies and being in our bodies. And if that seems so far fetched to you, please call Erin. Get the sisters help. Get out of that hole that you're in because we have beautiful things to do in this earth vessels that we have been super blessed with. So,
Ooh.
Erin, thank you so much for coming. Love you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Suzy. And one last thing I want to give to everybody who's listening, or not give, but I'm going to encourage you to take my food freedom quiz because it will help you understand a little bit more where you're at on the spectrum of eating styles.
Cool.
And then in there, I give you some tips specifically to help you get back on the same team as your body. So
And that
that's
body
another
scan, we will put that link in the notes. So
awesome.
go take that.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank
You're such an incredible
you. Love you
host.
so much.
And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.